WASPA, MDs and CEOs who are present. Welcome to the 2023 Kenya Water and Sanitation International Conference and Exhibition. This being day 2 of our event. We had a very, very fruitful day yesterday, led by none other than His Excellency, the Deputy President of the Republic of Kenya, Honorable Rigathi Gachagua, and our whole team from the government protocol and the team behind what we had yesterday. Today we are very proud again to have you here. As a former Cabinet Secretary for Water, I am sure you are at home. Having moved from water, then to labor, and now to cooperative, you can easily get the nexus between water, labor, and cooperative developments. It's a very clear line of areas where human interest is very important and people are also very, very important. So feel welcome, our chief guest today, and we are very proud to have you here. I'll not take so much time. I had earlier recognized a number of other sponsors, and allow me just take 2 minutes to appreciate them again, and that's why they're here with us. The organizers, of course, led by the Ministry of Water, Sanitation and Irrigation. The team behind it, of course, led by our own Cabinet Secretary and the whole team from the Ministry of Water, Sanitation and Irrigation. We wish to appreciate you so much. Let's clap for our ministry, please. Yes, you also have a big team from the Council of Governors who have worked very closely with our ministry. Let's appreciate our Council of Governors. The team behind this is Water and Sanitation Service Providers, WASPA. Let's appreciate WASPA. Our chief guest today, we have also received a lot of support from our local county government, the County Government of Mombasa. Let's clap for them, please. Thank you so much. Sponsors, we have Top Pipe, WASREP, Pure Equity, CPF, Thika Water, National Bank, Safaricom, African Population and Research, and Health Research Center, Family Bank, and SPA. Let's clap for all of them, please. I will not forget our pace setters. We have Kiwasco, Cooperative Bank, Fresh Life, Tana Waterworks Development Agency, Water Fund, Wash Voice, and Central Rift Valley Waterworks Development Agency. Let's appreciate them, please. Thank you so much. For the interest of time, I might not have time to introduce all of you, but feel appreciated and welcome for day 2 of our Kenya Water and Sanitation International Conference and Exhibition happening here at Sarova White Sands Hotel, Mombasa. Let me take this opportunity now to invite our CEO, WASPA, Mr. Anthony Ambugo, to take over from there. Thank you very much.
Give me one. Thank you, my co-MC, our Cabinet Secretary, Honorable Alice Wahome. Allow me to recognize the protocols that have been mentioned. Your colleague, our former CS and current CS cooperatives and medium small enterprises, Honorable Chelugui, whom we have worked closely with, all protocols observed. Allow me to recognize also the participation of the international partners who are here. We have Professor Corey from Oregon University, please. Thank you. He's one of the main speakers. We have a team from Malawi. Kindly be upstanding for recognition. Kindly be upstanding. Let's appreciate them. Thank you. Yesterday we had Sullivan. I don't know if he's in the room, all of the way from Abidjan. Then we also have Professor Muhairwe from Uganda, former MD National Water and Sewerage Corporation. So I don't have much to say, but at this time I want to invite the Water Secretary to take charge of the session as we move. But this is the day we are also having. Water Secretary, just come please, as you come. We have the keynote speaker for the day, who is our Cabinet Secretary in charge of cooperatives. Then we have 2 plenary sessions, excuse me. Then we move into breakout sessions. Let's appreciate the Water Secretary.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mbugo. The chief guest for today, Mr. Solomon Chelagui, the Cabinet Secretary for Cooperative, Micro and Small Enterprises, the Cabinet Secretary for Water, Sanitation and Irrigation, Honorable Alice Wahome, the PS for Water and State Department for Water and Sanitation, Dr. Paul Rono, the chairpersons who are here from the various water sector institutions, the CEOs, the MDs, and all the delegates. Good morning.
Good morning.
God is good.
All the time.
God is good all the time, and that's why we are here this morning, and that's why we keep on receiving our chief guest. Yesterday we had the Deputy President with us, and today we have the Cabinet Secretary for Cooperatives. Today's main issue this morning is about governance. The challenges that we have been mentioning that are in the sector, majority of them can be resolved if you have good governance in the sector. And that's why this morning we have got the Cabinet Secretary for Cooperatives, Micro and Small, Medium Enterprises to talk about governance. So this morning, the Cabinet Secretary will talk about governance. I just want to introduce him. That is the current Cabinet Secretary in the Ministry of Cooperatives and Micro and Small and Medium Enterprises. Prior to this, he served as Cabinet Secretary for Water and also Labor. The Cabinet Secretary holds a master's degree in finance, investment and strategic management, and also bachelor's of commerce in management option, science option. All of them are from the University of Nairobi. He has extensively been trained in corporate governance. The Cabinet Secretary has over 20 years working experience in corporate governance, policy formulation, monitoring and reviewing, implementation and technical policies, water engineering, finance, investment and strategic management, and has worked directly with different government institutions. The Cabinet Secretary has been vested with Elder of Golden Heart, EGH. That's a presidential award for outstanding and stewardship service. So you have the right person to tell us about corporate governance, which will solve most problems, most challenges that we have in the sector. But before it comes to the stage, I want to invite the Principal Secretary, Dr. Paul Rono, to come and make a few remarks and then invite the Cabinet Secretary for Water to welcome the chief guest. Welcome, PS.
Wow. Good morning. Good morning. The temperatures are very cold here. Is it true? Our chief guest for today, the CS Cooperative and MSME, medium, small, and micro, small, and medium enterprise, Honorable Simon Chelagui, CS, Ministry of Water, Sanitation and Irrigation, Honorable Alice Wahome, the team from WASPA, the participants, the big team from the county government, the sponsors for this event, the exhibitors, private sector, all protocols of serve. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning again. Good morning on this second day. This is still a great day. Good morning. I feel like you are a little bit cold today, but I think because of it is still very early in the morning in Mombasa, and many a times maybe you don't wake up on time, but I believe we have the necessary energy to take us on today's agenda to make sure that we put on paper our discussion so that we can address the issues of management of water using technology and innovation, as we also pitch today's topic on governance. This team, CS, our chief guest, I think from the introduction, you are not a guest in water. You have been here, and if there's a book to be written on water, you'll have a chapter, because I've read about a number of programs you initiated, which are very impactful to this country when it comes to water development, deployment, and management. So if we are to write any book on water, I think, Honorable Chelogo, you will have a chapter, and a chapter not less than 2 pages. It is great to have you today here so that you can tell us more, tell us the history, and tell us whether we are on course as we move ahead. We look at the programs we have as pronounced by government. We also look at some of the pillars we require to effectively deploy these big programs. And we saw that we need management and we need governance as the lifeblood for this management of water so that we can deliver on this agenda well. This team, you have all brief, and we really recognize you. And that is why we said before we move ahead to discuss issues to do with management of water, we need this conference so that you can guide in some of the good ideas the sector has, which we believe it will assist the ministry and my department in particular in charge of water and sanitation to propel the great ideas for this nation when it comes to water and sanitation. The team yesterday, the discussion was a hot discussion, and the Secretariat put up a good agenda for yesterday. Today is another great day, and I want to request all of us as we really provoke our minds, exchange ideas, and gain knowledge. Let us combine with wisdom and ensure that we are here throughout the day. Let us also give time. Mombasa is a good place. Kuingia ni rahisi, kutoka ni ngumu. It means a lot when you are in Mombasa. But let us try as much as possible to keep time, because for us to really push this sector forward, time is of essence. And I want to request that every other day, let us be here on time, and every day is a great day for this conference, because we have different speakers from in and outside the country, and we want to listen to them so that we can team up together and move the longest distance and also move fast to deliver on this agenda of water. Kenyans are asking for services. I know Kenyans will ask, is that another conference to write a long report? But we need to tell them, it is a short report, but we are on delivery. They want water, sanitation, irrigation. They don't want papers. But we are saying as leaders, there is no way you can deliver on this great agenda unless you put it in black and white so that the next generation will be able to appreciate that space and also carry forward. But we need to do it with speed, and that is why this engagement is so important, and I wish all of you, we are here throughout on time so that we can listen to one another, we can critique our ideas, and we can add to knowledge on this sector. With those few remarks, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to welcome our CS, Ministry of Water, Sanitation and Irrigation, to make our remarks, and welcome our chief guest for today. Thank you.
Thank you, PS Dr. Kiprono Rono. Kiprono Rono. There is a Rono before and another Rono. Some of the names are quite interesting. Our chief guest, Simon Cherugui, the Cabinet Secretary, Cooperatives and SMEs, and a former minister for water. I think that time irrigation was not part of the ministry, but now we have another child called irrigation. Sanitation, of course, is receiving a lot of attention. You have just whispered to me that the area of sanitation had not received quite good profile within the ministry, and that means you are commending some of the efforts we are making. We really are very grateful to have you this morning as our former minister for this ministry. You obviously have a good history and memory of some of the ideas that you must have implemented, and even to possibly jog our minds and memory as to whether we are also maybe taking the torch forward as you had started. The reform for water started way back in 2002 when we got the first Water Act. Since then, obviously, the sector has made huge mileage. There are several achievements that we can take home, count about. And this particular morning, with your presence here, we just want to remind you that our theme is innovative, it's technology and innovation as tools that would assist this sector in ensuring that we are able to accelerate access to safely managed water and sanitation. So the two tools are innovation and technology, or technology and innovation. That has been the center of discussion. We have some people here who have the right technology, or they know where we can get this technology and how we can implement, including data management in the sector, information collection for purposes of improving our work, reporting systems, management systems. All these make our work either easy or difficult if we do not manage that properly. I want to commend, as I call you, the organizers. The people who have taken the heat is the WASPA, because they are the lead institution. WASPA, with their chair here, Engineer Kenya, the CEO, and their team. The county government of Mombasa has been instrumental, because they made this workshop environment peaceful politically. We have exhibitors who are very key stakeholders. We have partners who have gone out of their way to support. And we have, of course, the participants, without whom this workshop would not have been successful. The county governments are represented by COG. We had Mwadime here, the chair of water and the natural resources for COG in his own right, also as a governor for Taita Taveta. We had also the governor of Mombasa here yesterday, and the governor for Laikipia, Irongo. But we also started with the CS Mvuria, and he was able to help us link the work that they do at mining, and living mining, but the linkage between blue economy and maritime, how maritime life requires sanitation, requires us to reduce pollution, requires us to manage water safely for sea life. And now that you are here as the Minister for Cooperatives, I'm sure there is a way we can link the efforts of the water service providers to cooperatives movements, including using those platforms to market water as not as just a social good, because water is a social good commodity. but also as a revenue earner. And therefore, we are pleased to have your presence here. Let me not speak a lot because you are the guest, but I want to take this opportunity to commend the water service providers, but also remind them that I'm still insisting the solution to ensuring that we access water, even if as a ministry, as a national government, we develop a lot of water, if we cannot efficiently deliver that water to the consumer, then we are doing nothing. Our efforts will be frustrated. And of course, the service providers have their own challenges, which they are sharing here. And some of those challenges go to speak to management issues, governance issues, political environment, continuity, systems that they have inherited for quite some time. Some are old systems not functioning, but you cannot sit there with the systems that are not functioning and look for solution elsewhere. You have a problem in your hands, tell us how we'll help you to get out of that problem. The water development agencies are enabling national government institutions. Do not see the development agencies as your competitors. I want to plead that water service providers, our companies, at the grassroots, where the rubber meets the road, must start seeing water development agencies as partners, as institutions that can link them properly with the national government to build their capacity. Because in terms of quality delivery, the national government has a constitutional responsibility to support capacity building of the water service providers. Let us compete with each other on efficiency, on revenue collection, on satisfaction to the customer. I think if we did that, then we shall have met our constitutional duty under Article 43 to the Kenyans. I want to encourage you in your new ministry and congratulate you, because if you had done a bad job at the water ministry, I'm very sure you wouldn't have found yourself in another ministry, in another government, and that therefore we recognize as a ministry your footprints in this particular ministry. I know you hold my hand when you think I need your support, and your coming here demonstrates the continuous collaboration between my ministry and your ministry. Thank you very much for coming. Karibu sana. Let's give our minister a clap for finding time. As you come, I want to tell you that these people have also a system of assessing themselves. And you know that. We yesterday launched the impact report on performance. And I therefore will want to give you this copy as you address this gathering. Thank you very much. Welcome.
The Honorable Cabinet Secretary, the Ministry of Water, Irrigation and Sanitation, Honorable Alice Wahome, the Principal Secretary, Dr. Paul Rono, the Water Secretary, Engineer Halima, the Chair, WASPA, Engineer Kinya, and the CEO. All the chairs of various water agencies, the CEOs, water service providers, the county government, the sponsors, and international delegates I heard from Malawi, and wish to recognize my good long-time friend, Dr. William Muhairwe. Maybe you can stand for recognition, and you face the... I don't know where the cameras are. When someone stands, we were turning around with the CS here. We were almost breaking our necks. I think when some recognition is done, the cameras should focus so that we don't struggle a lot trying to trace who that person is. But nonetheless, also recognize the organizers of this event, a very important event, and I'm happy, Bwana CEO, that you've kept the promise of annual water conference, because through this, we're able to interact with very many stakeholders and review and reflect, because we are whole partners, and no idea is better than the other. So I'm pleased, Honorable Minister, to be back home. I'm happy to be back home. We worked with these people. We did so many things amidst so many challenges, but through partnership, by working together, we were able to achieve what we could. My stay in the ministry was only 1 year and 6 months, and we were able to mobilize. It began with very simple things, like a common WhatsApp. We had a WhatsApp group of the minister, the PSS, the CAS, all the heads of department, all the CEOs. And every time we had an event like this, we will post. Every time we had an activity in Rift Valley, I remember Engineer Wendot would post, and all of us would see what's happening in Rift Valley, what's happening in Coast, what's happening in North Tanadi, and we managed our budget by allocating resources evenly and equitably, depending on activities of each agency. And in that, we were able to activate all the agencies. Everybody was busy and active. And there, my role then became just monitoring and evaluating. So we did that, and I want to thank you, especially those that I can still recognize. I can see so many faces, new faces. I can recognize Mwamati of Tanadi. I can recognize Wasrep and a few others. The other fellows, Kina Brigadier and Junge, are young kids, new kids in the block, and I'm sure they will provide a lot of energy to the movement. So I want to thank you for the time we spent and the time we worked together, and I'm also proud of that 1.5 years. I feel as a person, really, it's satisfying to give people water. I remember one day when we were in Wajir, a place called Anole. These people have been trekking for 25 kilometers to get to the nearest watering point. And through Water Sector Trust Fund, we invested about 30 million shillings. And we drilled a borehole and piped that water for 25 kilometers. The day I went there to open the tap of water, old men of 70 years, 65 years were crying. And that really moved me. And as you say, Waziri, water is a social good. It touches people. It's a way, it's a life. Water is life. So when you see a man of 65 years, at the sight of water, he drops and he cries. That is emotional. And so what you are doing in the ministry is emotional. It is social. It is economic. It's commercial. And any discussion around water through harnessing technology and any other way will go a long way to address a runaway commitment of our people, of our country when we got independence. So, Waziri, I don't take this invitation for granted. I am pleased to be here and very happy to be here to talk to colleagues, those whom we worked a few years ago. So I'm delighted to join the water sector stakeholders from Kenya and from around the world during this critical conference here in Mombasa. It is my pleasure to note that this conference, themed Harnessing Technology and Innovation to Accelerate Access to Safely Managed Water and Sanitation for All, seeks to explore technology in accelerating water and sanitation access. At the onset, I want to thank the organizers and sponsors of these insightful, ingenious efforts of planning and bringing us together during these challenging global circumstances to have a conversation on what the government and stakeholders need to undertake to drive towards achieving the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal number 6 ahead of 2030 for Kenya. Water resources in Kenya, like many other parts of the globe, have been diminishing with the increase in abstraction due to an increase in demand attributed to population. Water and resources is a runaway target. The demands keep growing and rising. Our population keep rising. Our supply and water sources keep reducing. And that is why we have to begin a conversation with the other ministries, Ministry of Forest and Environment, Ministry of Marine and Blue Economy, because we have a collective responsibility as a government to address the global issues around water sources, which is a big issue. And as I go to address the reforms, I will be able to connect and bring out the original, the thinking then on why we need reforms and why reforms are important even going forward. Encroachment of water towers has led to degradation of water catchment areas, resulting in reduced water volumes, dry riverbeds, and increased transboundary water conflicts. Water losses are high and unreliably informed, where up to an estimated 45% of the water produced is not accounted for. This has been a big issue. The non-revenue water has been a big issue in my time and continues to challenge us even now. It is something that I want to challenge the water service providers who are in the room. Being the last mile providers, being using the words of the minister, where the rubber meets the road, you have a responsibility, you have a duty to ensure we reduce at least the non-technical. We have a lot of commercial losses. This one we can handle. This doesn't require a lot of investment. This you can manage. The non-revenue water in Nairobi is over 50%. So what Nairobi receives in a day, 50% of that water goes down the drain. That is water that we have treated that water, we have piped that water, and we have invested in connectivity, and then we just lose. In some cases, that is an issue that needs to be really addressed administratively and also legally, because Kenya loses over 10 billion shillings in non-revenue water. And as we pursue the agenda the minister is pushing, we just come before cabinet, the public-private partnership. If we don't fix that problem of non-revenue water, our PPPs will be a challenge. Will be a challenge. I want to cite the case of Uganda, the National Water and Sewerage Corporation, under the leadership of Dr. William Muhairwe, who is here with us. This was a forgotten place. This was a sinking hole, like many other institutions and departments in our country. But the managing director took that responsibility and began reforms, beginning with Kampala, Jinja, and Entebbe, and that was their original mandate. But over time, they were able to increase efficiency in delivery of water and spread out, and eventually they were given the whole country to manage. Now, the agency, National Water Corporation, took over the role of the ministry, because then the ministry in Uganda had completely failed to address the needs of Uganda people. So there was no additional budget. There were no donors in the beginning. But as he progressively moved, instituting reforms and collecting revenue, he was plowing back the same collection, and in the process attracted attention of the World Bank, of other financial institutions. And today, the water coverage in Uganda, since he left and up to date, the water supply, the water provision is almost funded by internally generated revenue. Other than a little bit of funding from donors, the reforms and the support of that agency is felt across. Now they have moved to the countryside, and all the towns are now taken over. We had a similar institution, National Water Corporation and Pipeline, which was having a national mandate. But as I'm going to speak about the reforms that began, we also had an issue on governance, on leadership, on management. And I will be able to point out, when these reforms started, towns like Nyeri, which began, I remember the days of Engineer Ngoigoti, the founding CEO of Nyeri. And to date, Nyeri is leading, I don't know today, but as I left, Nyeri was still the leading water service provider in terms of efficiency, in terms of collection, in terms of even revenue. They were the best. They could be small in size, but well managed. These are reforms and management institutionalized by the founding CEO. Eldoret Water, ELDOWAS, when I took office, was actually depending on the ministry to pay salaries. They were collecting then negative. They were collecting, I think, about between 12 and 15 million. And their operational cost was over 43 million. They could not meet their operational expense. And somehow we had to help. But through by working together, they came to the ministry. We were able to support them. We gave them some staff, and they were also good in listening to our advice. They introduced digital meters, and suddenly within 1 year, the revenue went up to 116 million shillings a month, and they were able to meet their cost. I remember there was a certain corner of Eldoret that we piloted the digital meters. Revenue collection went beyond 100% because they were paying both the current bills and the old bills. And as we moved, Eldoret moved from position, they didn't have a position, to almost number 3 in terms of revenue collection. I don't know the current position, but that is the story I remember. So reforms and governance matter a lot in water sector. Sanitation is a sector that has been historically overlooked while addressing other issues. On global scale, almost 85% of wastewater produced impacts on public health. And that time we said 60% of our patients in our public hospitals, in private hospital, are suffering from waterborne diseases. If we fix sanitation, we will reduce the budget, the expenditure on medication by almost the same amount. That money can be used to develop, invest in sanitation facilities. So it's our desire and prayer that as we push investment in sanitation, we should build a connection between health and provision of sewerage and sanitation services. That way, we will minimize. They say prevention is better than cure. We could do the prevention through the Ministry of Water. Access to sanitation services is a challenge, especially with rapid population and urbanization, which creates an added demand on water and sanitation services. We know of our slums. We have 1,477 slums in Kenya, and all of them lack sewer connection or even water supply. I remember in Kibera when we had a crisis, I called the managing director of Nairobi Water and Sewerage. And we had an issue. Majority of those fellows in Kibera do not have conventional water connection. And they were fighting and scrambling for water kiosks. We sat down with them. We were connecting them to Kabete, the new project that was funded by, I think, African Development Bank. So we were suddenly going to have water, but how to use, how to connect was the problem. So we grouped them. We called all of them. They used to call them water thieves. We made them water fenders. And we grouped them into associations to recognize them and give them some arrangement. And we signed with Nairobi Water and Sewerage. We built kiosks around Kibera and asked them to form association. And through that, they began to pay for the use of water, and also water became available because no more illegal connection. If you go to Kibera, you'll find flying pipes which fly crossing over certain buildings and landing in some houses. Now we have proper connection to every household. So we have a bulk meter, and then the rest pick from that at a reasonable negotiated rate. The chaos of water scramble came to a stop in Kibera. We have that problem. So the pro-poor approach is very important. So dear WASH stakeholders, climate change is here with us, and evident especially throughout this year where we have erratic weather, prolonged droughts and floods. In climate adaptation, conservation of existing natural resource is key as we optimize the existing resources at the same time ensuring that quality of the resources is maintained, if not improved, and quality of equipment interacting with water resources from catchment areas to end users. With pressure mounting due to increased water demand and decreasing freshwater resources compounded by climate change, impacts and insufficient budgets, country faces major challenges in provision of universal water and sanitation coverage expected by 2030. And on this, Honorable Minister, I stand with you and I support your move towards investment, sourcing for money alternative investment, and even direct investment. We did a national water investment plan, which was funded by the World Bank. And in this investment plan, which I think is still, we are still within that investment, JICA, it was done by Japanese International Cooperation Agency. That plan told us we require a total investment of 1 trillion shillings every year. Was it 1 trillion or 1 billion? 100 million. 100 billion shillings every year in new water projects for us to catch up and raise the water coverage in our country to 80% by that time, 2030. We are only 7 years to 2030. Our investment has not just been not there, but if we were to catch up, we have to double the investment. I look at your budget allocation the other day, Honorable Minister, and I just went into prayers for you because I think the water needs and what you are likely to do is going to widen. The gap is going to widen. So we must be intentional. We must be practical with our plans. We cannot expect water supply in Kenya to be realized and not investing in this sector. We have to be purposeful. So investment in water supply needs to go hand in hand with our expectation. When we talk of water, when we pronounce this issue in our constitution, that water is life and water is a human right, then we must be intentional and we must be clear with our plans. Otherwise, we'll just become another budget, another statement, which will really be, you remember our founding president, Jomo Kenyatta, and that statement is in our boardroom in the Ministry of Water. I left it there in the wall. The president had said by 1969, all Kenyans will have access to water. 1969. That pronouncement of the president is in our boardroom in the Ministry of Water. We are now almost 50 years after that pronouncement, and the gap is not just reduced, but widened. So allow me to just run you through the journey on reforms in Kenya since our independence. In 1974, we did not have a ministry designated for water in Kenya. Water was managed by a Department of Water Development, then housed in the ministries including Agriculture, Public Works, Natural Resources. And I think one time it was housed in East African Community. So really, water resources being addressed from East African Community. If you imagine that connection is really putting water in a bigger challenge than where we are. I think we are better organized now. In 1974, the government of Kenya upgraded the Department of Water Development in Ministry of Agriculture into a full water ministry. In 1999, the ministry developed National Water Policy, Sessional Paper number 1, which was adopted by Parliament in April 1999 to provide policy direction on water resources management and development. The policy introduced water sector reforms and moved the ministry from direct service provision to policy formulation, resource mobilization, and coordination of functions. Regulation of water services and water resource management were also made as separate functions. I remember our district water officer, Koibatek, Engineer Samuel Alima, used to receive 5 million shillings for the whole county. How much, what can you do with 5 million in Kenya? 5 million shillings, 2 sub-counties. So it is the reforms that brought in the changes that we see now in the water sector. To implement the policy and the water sector reforms, the Water Act Cap 372 was repealed and the Water Act 2002 was enacted. In the water sector reforms, the Water Act 2002 was gazetted in 2003 and implementation began in 2004. During the 2004 to 2005, new institutions were established and given legal mandates according to the Act as follows. The Water Services Regulatory Board, WASREB, and I see the CEO here, Engineer Nyaga. The acting CEO. Their role was to provide regulation of water services. Then we had 8 water service boards, and these were assets holding and development. These later had a big conflict with the counties because sometimes water is devolved, sometimes water is national. But that separation is still being worked on. I have different view. I insisted that these assets can only be developed at the national level and the water provision be handled at the county level. That would make, and we have a clear connection. We have agreements on handing over of assets, on management of assets between the national government and the county government. The reason why we are still having a challenge with our debts is because we have no connection, proper connection between the water service providers and the water service boards, which now later became water works agencies. That needs to be worked out because honestly, the national government goes into borrowing, signing agreements with the World Bank, African Development Bank, secures the loan and invest in these assets and hand over the assets. And there is no revenue, and there is no reporting, there is no returns. In Nairobi today, as we speak, there are ongoing programs of over 100 billion shillings, as we speak. In the coast region, I remember the Northland Water Project, I remember Dongokundu Water Project, we did Changamwe Sewerage through African Development Loan, we did Mwache Dam, 13 billion investment. All that will come to Mombasa and the neighboring counties. And in the end, we hand over. How will we pay back the loan? How will Treasury keep borrowing money and not servicing? Yet, water is a commercial utility. We can generate revenue and assist and support our national treasury to invest and connect water, connect the next Kenyan to water services. We have the Water Sector Trust Fund, which was Poor Basket Fund for water services. We have the Water Resource Management Authority, and I've seen the CEO here, Engineer Ebana Shurie, and the water service providers, including Kenya and everybody else. And I'm happy for you, Kenya. You have a you are a trailblazer in the water sector. When he served in Malindi, here in the coast, and later came to Thika, we can see Thika, even though he's serving a small area, they have demonstrated, they have stood out in terms of water services. The transfer plan was approved in July 2005, and the Ministry of Water and Irrigation initiated the transfer of mandates, assets, and personnel to the new institutions. The basis and purpose of water in services institutional reforms commenced in 2002 when Water Act 372 of 2002 was enacted. The promulgation of our Constitution of Kenya 2010 was a game changer in the water sector, having introduced two radical changes, namely devolution and the aspect of water as a human right. So when you begin to connect water and human rights, it shifts the gears. It shifts the planning, the thinking. Water Act 2016 was enacted to realign the sector's institutional and legal framework to the Constitution of Kenya 2010. The Water Act 2016 was created several institutions requiring establishment. And this is really the job that I did in the ministry, Honorable Minister. We reviewed institutional setup. The Ministry of Water and Sanitation then, which is now Ministry of Water and Irrigation and Sanitation today, we reduced our role to policy formulation and coordination. We also had WASREP, which we still emphasize must continue providing regulation of water services. They license, they regulate, they manage the tariffs, they publish the tariffs. And they don't just do that. They engage them in a stakeholders forum to determine the investment and work out a cost recovery tariff, meaning water service providers are really not a profit-making entity. What we are looking at is cost recovery. So if we have a loan, we have services that we need to provide, that is factored in. And WASREP, by the time I left at 88 water service providers they were regulating. Then we have the Water Sector Trust Fund, which was Propua Basket Fund of water. Then Water Resources Authority, which is regulation of water resources, and the Water Harvesting and Storage Authority, which is really dealing with water storage and flood control. Then we also had a very important unit called Water Sources Basin Committee. These are the fellows who managers working together with WARMA. They manage and come through association to manage our water sources, including rivers, intakes, and dams. Then the service providers, we still continue to emphasize, they continue with provision of water services with county government. A forum, Honorable Minister, needs to be created between the water service providers and also the waterworks agencies and also the ministry. We cannot have water service provision completely delinked from the ministry, because if water is disconnected in Thika today, Bidco, which is the biggest consumer of their service, will call you or will cry to you over non-provision of water. The country will focus on you. Well, that mandate is with the water service providers, but the calls will come to you, the challenge will come to you. The president will call you. So if there is no connection, if today we had a problem in this Sasumua Dam, we had floods, and when this dam when this dam collapsed, the problem was no longer at the water, and it was no longer it was at the water. It became my problem, the ministry problem. So water is truly a national resource. I had issues with Governor of Murang'a, Governor Wairia. Wairia had this thinking that water belongs to Murang'a and should remain in Murang'a. And if we cannot use all the water, I'm sorry, Minister, you come from Murang'a. And if this water cannot be used by Murang'a people, let it flow to the coast. We don't want our water going to Nairobi for people to shower and wash vehicles and misuse flat hardening and all that. So this issue went overboard, and it became a national crisis. Because if we did that, what happens to people in Kwale, Mombasa, Kilifi, who have no source of water of their own? They rely on upstream for water to flow to we depend on Mzima Springs, we depend on Thwake to supply water to Mombasa. What will happen to these people? What will happen to people like Wajir and Mandera? Mandera depends on water through Ramo River from Ethiopia. If Ethiopians would also block their water, what happens to Mandera people? If Kenya blocked if we blocked our rivers from flowing to Lake Victoria, what happens to people in Egypt and all the 11 countries? So, water is a God-given resource, and we have to use that resource evenly. And the ministry is the best placed unit that will manage water and apportion accordingly to the rest of the country. Then we have KEWI, Kenya Water Institute, and we have a new act of 2001, and their role was to do training and research. And I'm happy with what KEWI has achieved. I saw in Embu, one lady, one girl went through KEWI and they got a diploma in water service management, water resource management. Has now been given a whole plant of 2 billion shillings. The entire Embu town and neighborhood relies on that source, and it's being run and managed by that graduate of KEWI. Is when I realized that KEWI is really a very important institution in water provision in Kenya. The challenge we have had is investing 2 billion shillings in a critical resource and handing over to quacks, people who have no knowledge, have no clue on running water supply. You will find very small failures like phase failure. A whole town is disconnected. Of an item that will cost 20,000, a whole city is disconnected because we are handing over our assets, our critical assets, to people who have no knowledge. So as we continue to train more and more, we need to create partnership between KEWI and counties so that the county government can sponsor students to come to KEWI, get some knowledge, some training, and go back. We will be able to save our investments. I did a water project in Baringo, 100 boreholes funded by JICA. 1 year down the line, that 64% were not working. Reason, when we handed over to the county, they handed over to the community. And the community have no clue, have no idea. So in the end, all those boreholes were not functioning by the time I left, just below 1 year after we commissioned them. So that is a challenge. Then the UNESCO, which is a regional groundwater mapping agency. So there are many things that we need to do, Honorable Minister. Organizational reviews to focus on staff capacity and needs, assessment, the ministry experts review of water service provision, Water Service Board, and Kenya Water Institute. I remember we had partnerships, people who had expressed interest to partner with KEWI so that we can lift, we can improve, we can increase the capacity of of our staff. The reforms in communication. It starts with simple forums, including WhatsApp. Today, you can make a world of a difference by creating forums that people can express and communicate. We have management and senior staff inductions, and also the legislative reforms in the water sector. And I am already aware, Minister, you tabled some documents on continuous reforms in this sector. We need to pilot institutional arrangement of bulk water under the devolved system of government, like the coast bulk water system. We can pilot with projects like Mzima Springs, the Thwake Dam, and sign individual water service provision agreement with Kwale County, with Kilifi County, with Mombasa County. And they will be able to off-take that water at the bulk meter. That way, we will be able to generate enough revenue to invest in our water resource. Projects like Chemasusu, projects like Itare Dam that supply water to Nakuru. I think these are projects that can fit well to our PPP program. So I'm honored to be here today to talk about those governance issues in the wash sector. Governance is both political and economic, and is a prime theme in sustainable water resource management, and without it, it is difficult for Kenya to scale up its initiatives. Water is a habitat and a resource of essential sustenance, prerequisite for fostering livelihoods, supporting economic growth, and ensuring the integrity of ecosystems. Water is both a common good of overriding public interest, as well as a limited natural resource at the focus of different uses and completed for the multiplicity of users. The use of water encompasses urban and rural, national, as well as transboundary challenges, and implies linkages across sectors such as agriculture, environment, energy, water and sanitation, and health. This makes governance of water sector particularly complex and challenging, with very crowded stakeholder space and often complex and contradictory policies and legal reforms. Honorable Minister, when we began this ADB program, it required us to have almost 1,250 stakeholders meeting. We had 39 projects, including Chebareria in West Pokot, and I see the immediate former governor from West Pokot, and even Makutano, all the way to Mandera. We required over 1,000 stakeholders. When we started this project of Mwache and Thwake had been paid 3.4 billion shillings 3 years earlier, before I arrived in Maji House. The Northern Collector Tunnel had also been paid money, that is Karimeno Dam, had also been paid money. The contractor had set up his site, but had no access to site. I remember when we started public participation, the clever Kenyans, as a way of raising the value of land, you'd get a report of 1 acre near Karimeno as 500 banana trees, as 500 coffee trees, and as 500 tea bushes in the same 1 acre. And on top of it, it has beehives. And every banana tree has 10 beehives. So the value of that land, you'll price. We were working with the National Land Commission, and they have a report. It was called Mr. Who from Kilifi. What was his name of the chairman? Swazuri. We held almost 10 meetings with Swasuri, and I'm asking Swasuri, are you sure this is true? He said, yes, this is a report from our consultants. We have the social consultant, we have the land survey, and this is the report. Then I asked him, on average, how many tree pushes do you have in an acre? He said 500. How many coffee trees do you have in an acre? He said maximum 480. And how many bananas can you have in a? And then he said almost the same. So how come we have tea, coffee, and bananas? And then the fellow still lives in that place. So the land value, our valuation, when we were doing the project investment plan, or rather estimating the coming up with the estimates, was 500,000 per acre. But with this report from experts, the price was 2.1 million per acre. So it took our cost beyond the project. Land compensation went beyond the cost of the project. And it became a difficult issue. In Kiambu, we had 18 meetings with everybody in Kiambu, from governor, senator, women rep, all the MPs in Maji House. Engineer Lima, you remember those meetings up to midnight, discussing the price and value of land in Kiambu for this Karimeno project to take off. Mwache Dam took 5 years on the same issues. When the World Bank came there, they said, we want to ensure that we manage all the social issues. We don't want another Ketraco. Ketraco had just done a project from Mombasa to Nairobi. And people were given money. Fellows received money. Those fellows from that place saw money for the first time in bulk. So fellows abandoned their families and they went to Mombasa, which the PS said, kuingia ni rahisi, kutoka ni shida. So those fellows started building their homes, their dream homes. So a fellow was paid 5 million for his land around Kwale, where the line will be passing. And he thought that is a lot of money. So he mobilized resources to build a mansion, which from estimates then would cost 40 million, because he has received 5 million. He has no idea how much that building. But the fact that he has 5 million, he will finish he will come up with this dream home. So we found homes without roofs, without doors, without windows, because the money just ran out. Because 5 million could not really build a house. So when we started the dam, the World Bank told us we want to do the houses ourselves. There was a big problem between the county assembly and the Ministry of Water. It took 2 years to agree, and that was the challenge. So, Honorable Minister, to deliver water service reforms, to deliver water services in Kenya, require you to roll up your sleeves. Beyond just the money and the engineers, we have to deal with the social issues. The issues of land compensation is a big problem in the water provision. As we are aware, the all governance processes describe the management of public goods and services based on shared responsibility and decision-making, collective action, and joint negotiation by state institutions and multitude of actors. Anybody can stop a water project. I don't know of any other project, but anybody can stop a water project. I don't know why. Ideally, the actors involved adhere to good governance principles in their interactions. It's thus ensuring equitable and sustainable benefits of people, environment, and economy resulting from management of water-related resource. So, dear colleagues, a significant issue that needs attention is the multiple legal and policy frameworks governing water at national level that often overlap and diverge both among the sectors and across government levels. The current public policies are also characterized by unintegrated objective setting, overlapping assignments of duties, deficient enforcement, and lack of monitoring and evaluation systems. This needs your urgent attention, Honorable Minister. For wash sector, we need to support and review development of an enabling environment of sustainable policies, strategies, and legislation, including means of their enforcement to favor integrated water resources management and wash policies that need to complement each other. 2, we need to support the transposition of international and supranational regulation and convention to national and subnational levels. 3, as obligated by the Constitution, we need to promote a multi-stakeholder approach to policy development and regulatory reforms, including government, civil society, parliament, commissions, and their private sector. 4, we need to promote establishment of vertical coordination and mechanisms and platforms that promote alignment, complementarity, and cooperation among different levels of government. The proposed water sector intergovernment framework will be a key need to be sealed. As we meet here today, sustainable financing of the water sector remains a challenge. Capital investments, often externally financed, are not matched with budgets for recurring costs, leading to rapidly deteriorating infrastructure, expensive rehabilitation, replacement efforts. In the city of Nairobi, the managing director of Nairobi Water and Sewerage, sometimes I felt should be redesignated as Nairobi Water Sharing Manager, because his role, his work, one, there are no maps in the city of Nairobi, including Mombasa here. The pipes were last installed in 1954. We do not have the maps and the routes of the pipes. The only man who knew, I remember they had a problem with Songo, the managing director of Nairobi Water, had a problem with the governor of Nairobi, and the governor wanted to sack him. And if he sacked Muguna, who has the maps in his head, they are nowhere in the papers, would have a crisis in Nairobi. And the only saving grace for Miguna was there was no other person who knows the pipe routing of Nairobi. So when I met the president, I told him, Mr. President, we have a problem. The governor wants to fire the CEO of Nairobi Water. First, we don't have enough supply of water in Nairobi. And secondly, the distribution is the main job that the managing director does every morning, to know which pipe goes where, how much do you allocate to CBD, how much goes to Karen, how much remains in Kabete, how much goes to Kasarani, is the duty and responsibility of Nairobi Water and Sewerage Managing Director. So, it means, therefore, that we are dealing with very old infrastructure. If today Muguna retired, we will have a problem. We need to develop all the maps, including Mombasa, Nairobi, Kisumu, Eldoret, Nyeri. All our water infrastructure need to be reduced to a document. We need to put them we now are living in an era of technology, and we need to utilize that, so that distribution of water becomes efficient and doesn't depend on a person. As we meet, therefore, the next issue is financing. We don't know how many consumers we have. Every day, WASREP, they give us a very good report, but they only limit their report to water service providers areas. They regulate. Who will assess the water supply in our rural areas? Who will tell us the national water coverage? We need to, and I had asked WASREP to expand their mandate. At least as an administratively, I ask them to do that, so that we have an idea of how much water we need in this country. We keep talking of 62%, 82%, but this is an arbitrary number. I find that we need to really go down so that when we talk of 80%, we're talking of 80% connection to all Kenyans. So that's the sector we need to consider also to support establishment of revenue system that allows water utilities to function in a sustainable manner. We are now talking of digital meters. PS, I told you of Eldowas had a problem, but when we introduced the digital meters, their revenue went up beyond 100%. If we did this across the country, we were in discussions to have all our water services connected to digital meters. It is an idea that we need to continue and then talk to our counties to ring fence the revenues and service provider. We need to support establishment of fair and sustainable tariff system. We need to support establishment of multi-annual strategic plans and also promote the roles and responsibilities of water sector to the lowest appropriate and competent. We need to promote the principle of subsidiary with planning and decision making deferred to the lowest level. We need to collaborate with water management at decentralized levels to be used as entry point for bottom decentralization push and support the incorporation of informal service providers into the national water service provision. So dear WASH practitioners, effective and efficient management of water resources is challenged by lack of accurate data and timely information, weak strategic planning and processes, and how human resources run. Honorable Minister, in my tour of duty in the ministry, I found almost 3 issues that I needed to keep tabs on every day. Number one is our engineers, our human resource. They are very difficult people. They are very clever people. They are learned people. And engineers compare them to doctors. How you harness and rally them to a cause matters a lot. The day we move all engineers into one direction, water sector will move forward. We can't do it. You can't fix pipes yourself or myself, but we must work with these engineers. So we must always pull them, mobilize them to ensure we are talking and moving in the same direction. That is one. Number two is to work with our partners. Water is externally funded. You must maintain breakfast meetings, office meetings, conference meetings, meet them, visit them, the World Bank, the African Development Bank. With those relationships, water sector will move forward. The third one is our interrelationship, one with our county government. Water is devolved. Without your input, participation, and engagement, if I had no relationship with Salim Vuria, Tuake will not, Mwache Dam would not have started. We had a lot of issues to deal with. If I had no relationship between Ngilu and Alfred Mutua and Professor Kivuda Kibwana, and I saw the CEC water here, Bob Kisiula of Makweni, Thwake would not have taken place. So we must also open your doors, open your engagements with these counties for water to move forward. Lastly is the community. The community where these projects will be done. We have a lot of compensation issues that need to be handled and handled carefully, or they can actually stop the project. That again needs to be handled. So Honorable Minister, if you keep those steps, and now the coordination role at the ministry. We have the Parliament, we have our National Assembly, and we have also our Senate and our internal coordination within the ministry. If those are handled well, then you will just be called to open projects, to commission projects, and oversee projects, which will be an interesting assignment. So if that is done, then we are sure, then we can move forward the water sector. So I don't want to go beyond there because I think I had over-prepared for this event. But in conclusion, is that although the government, Kenya government, has made good progress in increasing access to water and sanitation for the people and to support economic development, more needs to be done, especially in rallying the people to take personal and collective responsibility in supporting campaigns aimed at restoring water catchment areas. The Honorable Minister and the PS, you are joined in the hip and you have really to work together. I remember those days, there was a bit of a challenge, but with the good support of the PS and the minister available, the reforms and the water services was easy. So you too, the minister and the PS, will make the difference. And that coordination is also important. I want to remember the days I had with PS Joseph Virongo, and he came from administration, I came from private life, but we were able to gel so that we come up with an organized team. Water is about teams, it's about teamwork, it's about delivering as one. This will enable the country to return to the path of sustainable management and use of water resources, which will lead to increased flows in rivers, minimize service runoffs during the rains, and control flooding. WARMA, Water Resource Management Authority, do not let this agency die. Protect it, because without it, there will be no river, there will be no water source. If this agency runs out of money, there will be nobody to watch on our rivers. You remember our former governor, Waititu. Our governor, Waititu, went to some place in Kileleshwa. I think he had some property which he bought or acquired from Teleposta. So he found the river has encroached on his land. And being a good Kenyan, he found a way of managing the river to recover his property. So he relocated the river. He moved the river. So as I was sitting in my office one afternoon, a fellow came to me, a fellow I knew. He had a neighboring plot. The city council of Nairobi had gone to him. Now this fellow who was innocent and within the map of his property, he was okay. He was not within the riparian area. But the city council came to him now and told him, my friend, you have to relocate this house. It is on the riverbed. So when we investigated and looked at the maps, we discovered Waititu had actually relocated the river. And so that assignment we had to struggle with Sharia to restore back the river to its original map. I remember another day we were called to State House. KEPSA and Kenya Association of Manufacturers had complained that the cost of doing business in Kenya is very high. We have WARMA, we have NCA, we have VAT, we have PIN, they listed almost 20 tariffs that they pay to do business in Kenya. So what do? We remove WARMA. We should not be paying anything. That should be supported by National Treasury. We remove NEMA. That should be supported by the Ministry of Environment. So out of that meeting, it was resolved that WARMA will since then receive money from Treasury and NEMA will receive money from Treasury, something that has never happened. So WARMA could not police the rivers, and pollution in our river intensified. NEMA could not move. They had no fuel. They had no vehicles. And they could not police. So we cannot relate cost of doing business and doing business in the right way. You can't do without WARMA. You can't do without NEMA. These are institutions that ensure that we are all living in a good environment. Otherwise, good men of Kenya will relocate rivers, and the next day you find a river in your house, which you didn't have the previous day. It is my understanding that this conference is looking at modalities of closing the ever-widening financial gap, as well as application of appropriate technological innovations to enhance delivery of water and sanitation services and increase the use of, while conserving the extent of possible water catchment areas in the region. I look forward to a comprehensive conference report with clear and smart recommendations as we together partner to deliver the water and sanitation targets for all Kenyans. I look forward that the whole team here will support my sister here, Alice Wahome, in a pursuit of universal water coverage in Kenya. I look forward to an outcome that will bring the reforms, the governance, the management that we all desire and wish. I look forward to growth in water provision, irrigation, and even sanitation, something that we cannot ignore anymore. I would look forward that we participate in international and national conventions, including the Transboundary, the Nile Basin initiatives that cuts across 11 countries, almost the longest river in the world, and also how we utilize our water resources. We are living in challenging times. We have no rains. The scramble of our scarce, very important resource like water is very high in our country and in the world. And therefore, it is up to you, the water experts, the WASH stakeholders, to look for options, to look for ways of ensuring that this very important resource is not lost to all Kenyans. So I want to thank you. I want to thank all the participants for listening to me, and also keep watching. I keep watching your back. I keep checking on you. When I see articles from the Ministry of Water, I always have a keen eye to know what's going on in the sector. So with those many remarks, thank you and God bless you.
Let us put our hands together again for another clap for the minister. Thank you very much, Simon Cherugui, for that very deep, extensive presentation. That paper, we shall hold it dear and keep it with us. There are several issues that have come out, and because we've really dealt on it and you have explained almost every particular paragraph of your paper, I will not go highlight anything. I want to commend you for it, and I'm sure the participants have taken several points home with them, especially WASPA. I am personally, I think the point that I would like WASPA and the participants to pick is leveraging innovative financing, because he has raised the issue of the huge investment finance burden that we have. I think we need to provoke our minds during this conference on alternative financing without looking at the government as the only source. And when I say the government, I mean both government, county government and national government. Let the water service providers see themselves as utility, serious utility. And I'm keeping on taking back this because I think there is a small baby mentality syndrome or a small child mentality syndrome that we must cure among our water service providers. And I'm happy to see that you are actually competing for awards in terms of performance, because the service delivery cannot happen without proper management, efficient outfits. The ones who have gone forward and have a lot of good things going for them can also help others to benchmark with what you are doing. So, and therefore, with the good, are they called financial books or records, statements, you are able to think of alternative financing as a utility. And therefore, that has come out even in your presentation. I think the other issue that I wanted to press on is the same question of governance. Even if you get how much money, as much money as you possibly think you need, without governance, there will still be no return to investment. So let us have properly kept records, properly managed institutions, so that you are posting good records in terms of your organization. Finally, my colleague has raised the issue of, like Nairobi is the capital city. Where are the pipes passing? Who is the owner of the records? If we want to renew, to give non-revenue work, that is renewing of the systems, investing in that, whoever comes in and wants to invest in Nairobi renewal of systems, and I mean serious investment by way of rehabilitation, smart metering, system overhaul, data, how will they be able to evaluate the amount of work if the record even of the meters that we have are not there? If they don't know where the sewer line is, if they don't know where the water line passes, it means there is a lot of work for the water companies or water service providers. Initially, we had also said that we need master plans, one for the entire nation, but most critical, the master plan of your county. The service providers are within counties. They don't work cross county. They work within counties. The water development agencies work across the counties. But the service providers can be the owners of the master plans, either jointly with the national government, and you need to go back and look at where your master plan is, because you can imagine, and I know Muguna, not Miguna, he's called Muguna. Muguna, the MD in Nairobi, if then you cannot remove him because, and I'm not saying we remove him, I'm just saying from the statement of my colleague that there was a time he was under threat of removal. But the savior, of course, that is not good management. And I mean, good governance says that it should be the system that supports itself. Of course, the individuals are key players and actors, but it cannot be that one person is indispensable and that you would almost be held at ransom because he's the map, he's the pipe, he's the system, you know. So that is a very dangerous situation. So when you go back, because I will not be with you in the afternoon, the minister and myself, there was a cabinet committee meeting in the afternoon. In fact, we have changed our flight, but I think because of other schedules, I believe that the minister is leaving and I will not be with you in the afternoon, and therefore take those two issues back home. Then think as WASPA of how a smaller technical team, I think we need a very serious technical team as part of the outputs that will help you. And I'm saying this because I will not be there when you are doing the way forward. That will be reviewing or looking at where the counties are. finally, for me and the investors, the exhibitors, this forum is a business opportunity for you also, because the ministry is opened up to partnering with you. The water service providers are ready to work with you. I know we have even banks here. I have seen Equity, I have seen National Bank. I think there is also the Family Bank is here. And when I mention those three, if any other is there, don't think that I am discriminative. I may not have the entire list, but I know we have financial institutions here. We also have SACCOs that also can support work. Let's come up with the financial models that look at the smaller outfits at our county levels for purposes of supporting. And you know, women chairmans are always buying tanks. I see top what? Top pipe and top tanks. I know I've bought for myself a top tank. I didn't know the owners. Now I see the owners are here. So top tanks, the women struggle to have storage tanks. Come up with very innovative ways of spreading your support in maybe collaboration with finance institutions. Women normally repay their debts, their obligations 101%. And you can get their records from Women Enterprise Fund. And that is a government institution you can partner with of how to supply the tanks, not on cash delivery basis, but on a period spread. And that also would apply to pipes for our water service providers. They cannot get water from the storage to the people because they don't have the last mile pipes. And we have manufacturers who have pipes lying in their yards for 5 years. We have manufacturers with capacity to do 3 times what you are doing. Explore a way of partnering with water service providers to provide pipelines, or pipes, not lines, these are pipings, to the villages from the storage tanks in a different way than waiting for one check from the national government or from the county government. I think even communities can be able to be assisted in terms of coming up with models that they can support their own delivery in, because you see the mentality of it's the government that gives us water now is not applying, is not sustainable. We want sustainable ways of ensuring that we can deliver water. Thank you very much for listening to the minister, Minister Asante Sana, the participants. I think this is your clap. Thank you very much, even the exhibitors. And I know we have not been able to see all the booths. We will still see within the day. The PSS, please make sure you also visit the booths. You are the accounting officers. Sisi ni watu wa policy peke yake. But I'm available to engage the tank people, the pipes people, on new financing models. Not procurement, because I don't deal with the procurement. I'm talking about how we can think through of new methods of assisting in delivery, where you know that you can get direct contact with, and groups exist. Serious women groups are buying tanks every day, but they have to wait for 6 months or 1 year to go merry-go-round. Instead of them getting the tanks immediately, they have to wait for 1 year. I think there is a way you can think through those together with the pipes. Thank you very much, and God bless you. Systems must be reformed. The law on the part of the law, I know we are working on that. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Let's appreciate our Cabinet Secretary and also our chief guest today, Honorable Simon Chelugui. Another round of applause, please. So I'm told our chief guest, guided by our CS, Honorable Alice, will be able to visit a few stands, including that of Safaricom. So our chairman and PS will be able to lead them. And as they do that, we transit to another session. We have the first plenary this morning. We will try to move as fast as possible, and we'll be able to control the program. We know that we are holding you before we go to the health break, but we request for your indulgence, and shortly we'll be able to go to the health break. So at this juncture, I want to invite Engineer Alima, the Water Secretary, to guide us into that session. Let's appreciate Engineer as he comes.
So at this juncture, we are moving to the next stage. We are going to have the next speaker and the panelists on the same subject of good promotion of good governance in the water sector. So our next speaker is Dr. Lydia Muriuki. Dr. Lydia Muriuki is has leadership and strategic management expertise and policy and strategy analyst in the public sector with over 2 decades of experience in transformational leadership, turnaround management, public administration, and security management. She holds a PhD in strategic management and a visionary trailblazer who has been challenging the status quo. She has been challenging the status quo. In most striking success is our Pioneer County Commissioner for Kariuki. So participants, welcome Dr. Lydia Muriuki on stage. Dr. Lydia Muriuki, welcome on stage. And as he comes, I want the panelists also to come on board so that the turnover will be easy. I want Honorable Charity Kadhambi to come on stage, representing the chair of Departmental Committee on Bull Economy, Water and Irrigation. Dr. Julius Itunga, come on board. Alex Manyasi, come on board. Rose Nyakwana, come on board. Dr. Charles Oyaya, come on board. Honorable Agud Siad, come on board. The women representative for Garissa, if you are around, come on board. Eva Munya, come on board. So that the changeover will be fast enough. So at this stage, as you sit, I want to request Dr. Lydia to make her statement. Oh. Okay. Please have your seats. Have your seats. Honorable Kadhambi is going to the airport, so I will ask her to make some remarks before we go into the presentations and the panelists.
Thank you so much. Honorable Madam CS Alice Wahome, our CS Water and Sanitation, our CS Honorable Chelugui, our PS Water and Sanitation, Honorable Rono, all protocols observed. Allow me just to take 2 minutes so that we can save time. I'm Charity Kadhambi Chapkonye, Member of Parliament, Joro Constituency, Nakuru County. I sit in the Parliamentary Committee on Blue Economy, Water and Irrigation. Pleasure, great meeting our CS for hosting Kenya Water and Sanitation International Conference today in White Sands. I'm here just to make just few comments. As members of parliament, our responsibility is representation of the people, legislation part of it, and the oversight role. And the main work we are doing also for the ministry and the CS with our team, it is to make sure that we play the biggest role on the matters of the budget so that whatever program His Excellency the President is planning for this country can be implemented through our capable team, which His Excellency gave the position. Therefore, for us as members of parliament, Madam CS, I want actually to confirm most of the communication which have been done by Honorable Chelugui, who was previously the CS in the other parliament. And I wish to say for us as members of parliament and sitting in that respective committee, we actually understand the challenge the CS is undergoing when we are talking on the matters of compensation in this country, which has become so thorny. I know it has become a big burden. We still had some questions also CS, which you are raising, and I hope because of the professionals in this room who are supposed to be supporting you CS with the PSs so that you can implement the programs in this country. The simple question was, why should we also be having so many consultancy firms when we have professionals in the ministry? We were trying to see the kind of money most of the consultancy firms are getting out of this water sector. And number one CS was the so-called Mwache Dam, where we could find like 12 companies on consultancy position. And the kind of money which is being isolated for them, it was some of the questions we usually be raising up. Therefore, my humble request as a member of parliament and representing the Committee on Water, Blue Economy and Sanitation, let us, all of us, put our strength to save where we have been wasting so that we can, all of us, make this country better for each one of us. For the investors, thank you so much. Join, support, and thank you so much, Madam CS, because when a lady is seated in the water sector, even us women who have carried water with jelly cans, we really feel we are going to have hope for this country. For me, it is to wish you all the best and allow me to leave. Today I'm going back to the parliament. I must be there before 2:30. And guess what? We are again voting yes. We must support the government. We must look for funds, which we are going to give the CSs so that they can implement the programs. Therefore, if you are sitting here and you have a colleague who usually be voting no against the government, kindly advise them today before they mess us so much. God bless you so much. Stand to support His Excellency, support our CSs and the PSs. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Honorable Charity Gadambi. Thank you so much for those pieces of advice. We are now going to have our second speaker, Dr. Lydia Muriuki. You will have 15 minutes so that we save on time. Karibu, welcome.
Thank you very much. I acknowledge the presence of the two CSs, CS Cooperative and SMEs, and also CS Water, Irrigation and Sanitation, the PS, the water service providers, and the senior managers here and leaders, colleagues, chairmen, and CEOs. I think it's good afternoon almost. Yes, good afternoon. I'm very honored to be in your presence this afternoon for two reasons. The first reason is that I sat there and listened to both CSs. And you know what requires to be done in the Ministry of Water. Your predecessor and yourself have outlined what requires to be done in the Ministry of Water, Irrigation and Sanitation to make it possible that we realize not only the SDGs, but also what is the aspiration of our Constitution, enabling every Kenyan to have water And I would want to think that is the aspiration of also our brothers and sisters from the other African countries that have joined us today. I want to echo two very important perspectives that have been brought out. The first one by CS, water, that riveraging, walking the path that has been walked before. Riverage on finance, coming up with innovative ways of financing the water sector is going to bring us closer and closer to where we want to go. Then the next one, a wake-up call for all of us, especially those that are in the management, the water space. This is a wake-up call for us, that now that the challenges have been identified, we can't stop there. We must move to the next level to make sure that we realize the aspirations of our people. I was able to pick out two very important dimensions that come in good corporate governance. The first one is efficiency. The PS cited 45% of no revenue water. Could be water that cannot be accounted for when it comes to revenues. In my view, that would be a mark of some inefficiency in the way that the entire process is managed. So this brings up the parameters of good corporate governance: efficiency, effectiveness, transparency in our operations. So I'll go to my presentation and I'll be very, very brief. I want to look at the global perspective of corporate governance, and what we are facing as a country in the water sector has been faced by others, and also in other sectors, not only the water sector. And could be one of the solutions can be good corporate governance, improving our management, how we manage the resources that are at our disposal, how we manage the people that are with us, how we collaborate with all the stakeholders and partners, how we complement each other's effort, and how we synergize. Walking this journey has been done before and it delivers very good results. I want to begin by saying that the impact of technology and innovation is complex and multifaceted. It has the potential, even as we think about innovation and technology, it has the potential to bring about disruptions. So are we ready and prepared to handle those disruptions? And beginning from there, I can pose a question to those in corporate governance. All of us are in that space. COVID was with us in 2019. When COVID struck our country, it was described as a black swan, something that was unprecedented, something that had very disruptive consequences, and three things happened to our organizations, even the organizations that we manage ourselves here. There are some organizations that became stronger out of COVID. There are organizations that maintained the status quo after COVID. And there are organizations that sank after COVID. I'm happy that we are following this conversation, and there are others that are following it virtually. Could be that can be one of the positive effects of COVID. We learned that we cannot always face-to-face converge in a gathering like this, and opened other opportunities to do the same. So if I pose this question to us, if there was a COVID 2020 or COVID 2021, God forbid, what would happen to your organizations? My own thinking would be, for those organizations that will embrace technology, for those organizations that shall be innovative, for those organizations that shall reduce their turnaround time decision-making, how much time you take in decision-making, all of us will be affected by COVID-20 and COVID-21 in the same way. But for those organizations that embrace technology, organizations that are innovative, organizations that have very little turnaround time, will be able to thrive post-COVID if it comes. But those that do business as usual will be swept by the wave. So meaning for us, the challenges that have been brought out in this sector are known. If we develop an innovative mindset, and I'm happy we are talking of meters now. Earlier on, the smart meters may not have been there. We have seen what has happened as a result of the smart meters. What other step can we make to embrace innovations? We need not reinvent the wheel. Other countries have done it. So how can we run better practices, domesticate them, use them, and because I also work in a place, sometimes the challenge is not even doing all that. Sometimes the challenge is the follow through. And I'm happy the two CSs are here. One CS telling the other, I went up to this level, and can you continue on my footsteps? Doing that, I did best, and continue with it and improve it, and could be where I could not have done the best if the policies and the reforms were not the best, looking at them and then not continuing with them. We are saying good governance is in a state of transformation. Nothing is static. A complete state of transformation. And we're saying part of this transformation has been caused by good corporate governance. I would want to think there's no opposite for good corporate governance. Somebody may think bad, because when it is bad, it's not corporate governance. So we are simply saying corporate governance and what it entails. If we embrace it, the pillars, transparency, accountability, effectiveness, stakeholder engagement, we shall be able to deliver the results. And on this one, we have a customer, that is the customer, the user of water, who is very, very enlightened and very impatient. And like before, when people didn't know what they wanted, we are dealing with a very enlightened clientele. Somebody who knows and somebody who can demand. I can cite the Constitution and say our Constitution provides that there shall be A, B, C, D. So why are you not giving it to me? So in meeting the expectation of such a very knowledgeable customer, we need then to up our game and embrace good corporate governance. We are saying innovative technology has strengthened good governance before, but we need to think how we'll do it. So Professor Jody, through his Canal 5 Pillars, says we must keep re-evaluating our purpose. What is the purpose of the water service providers? What is the purpose of the Water Service Provider Association? What is the purpose of the ministry, the State Department, all the agencies? And could be coming from what was discussed here today, are there overlapping mandates? Is there over-institutionalization? And how can each one of us keep to their lanes and support the other person as they do what they are supposed to do? So we must cultivate a long-term mindset. There are those things that we do in the short term, but there are also those things that we must think moving forward. What is our global picture of water? The SDG could be, we will have the SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, but beyond that, what will be the next move? Collaboration is the way to go in this game. Collaboration. You'll find you are walking a journey, and it's been said when you walk alone, you may walk fast. But when you walk together, much as you may not walk very fast, you may deliver better results. There are other people in the same space that you are. People doing the same thing that you are doing. People who have even done the same thing that you are doing and have delivered better results. So collaboration, partnerships, synergizing is the way to go. Then we must integrate sustainability. Sometimes you are doing a lot of things and then you start today and then it's not sustainable, it dies. So how can we develop sustainability or integrate sustainability? So when we embrace technology in corporate governance, the first thing we do is that you increase transparency, accountability, and information flows faster. Then there is a lot engaged public engagement. Water, I'm happy as we speak, is a devolved function. And then water is a business of almost everybody, from the user, the one who manages the water, the ministry. So how can we increase public participation? Technology is going to help us increase public participation. Thank you very much. Because these days we have the mobile phone. Our grandmothers in the village are very technology savvy. They can use their mobile phones and everything that goes into it. So we have a platform on which we can engage the public to get to know their views. Delivery of water to the public can be enhanced through technology. But as we think of all this, technology can be a good servant, but a bad master. So we must manage technology. We manage the threat of the cyber risks. Technology offers great promise if we put in these safeguards. So we may want to look at technology even for you and us that are in the management space, the leadership space. What is it that you can do within that space? These days, technology enables you to have the diligent board portal. You need not have physical meetings like you're having. You have the governance crowd where you can have everything that you want to do, from the public participating in what you are doing, from the public voting on what you are doing. You can embrace technology to be able to do that. That is at practical level as the board, as you embrace good governance. But also as the head, because it is at the corporate governance level that you provide policy direction. You also provide strategic leadership. Do you want your organization to be doing cash up? Or do you want your organization to lead? Would you want to be one that catches up with others on what they are doing, or do you want to drive the innovation in your respective sector? It is doable, and it has been done before in other organizations. When we use ICT, it enables us to complement whatever is manual and ultimately delivers superior results. These are superior results to the stakeholders. The internal stakeholders, who are the people we work with. I can be here and also participating in a virtual engagement somewhere else. Superior results to the customers, superior results to our suppliers, and also superior results to the shareholders of the organizations that we lead. We are here to share experiences, to learn better practices from each other. And could be from what we learn, we may borrow and go with it home. We'll not copy, cut, and paste it in our organization, because one size fits all has never worked. It can work. We'll have to domesticate it to our unique circumstances. Borrow, go home with it, domesticate it to your unique, unique environment, and it's going to work for you. Innovations, especially if we introduce innovative ways of water service provision to our people, would be a game changer. Because imagine the 50 million Kenyans, all of us have a need for water. So if we could have a faster way of making sure that we get the water, then that would be a game changer, even for our government. It is an enabler and a game changer. So for the boards that are here, we are urging ourselves that we must keep pace with the advances of technology. The world is not going to wait for you. You must keep pace, and sometimes you must outlearn that pace, be faster than the competition. You may be providing a service for which there's no competition, but you need to compete with yourself, improving on the service you gave yesterday and making it better. But for those that compete with others, you must develop or enhance your competitive advantage. And this is by being ahead, embracing technology, and embracing innovation. We can learn from others that have gone before us. ICT has enabled service delivery in other ministries, in other sectors, and ICT can also enable us in the water sector. It's been tried, it's been tested, and I think is only getting better and better. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Lydia. Indeed, nothing is static. We must reform, and reform to get that good governance, to get that innovation so that we can have proper service delivery to the people of Kenya. So this will be followed by panelists. We have, I want them to raise their hands so that the participants can know them. We have Dr. Itunga. We have Lady Eva. We have Honorable Ugud Siad. We have Rose Alex Manyasi. Dr. Oyaya. Good. So we will have some questions. You will have about maximum of 5 minutes. The first one will go to the Honorable Siad. You are currently the Women Representative Member of Parliament for Garissa County and also a member of PAC. You are aware that we have done several investments in ASAL. In ASAL areas, we have done a lot of investments, but the results has been very little. The impact has been very little. So what innovative measures, what governance structures should we put in place as a sector to realize adequate service delivery in ASAL? You have the mic. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. My name is Amina Udgon, Women Representative of Garissa County. Allow me to thank the ministry for inviting me to this conference. I'm glad to be here. I was here since yesterday. And as a woman leader from ASAL communities, it is an extra mile to be here with water agencies and the ministry talking about water. As we all know, 70% or 80% of Kenya landmass falls under ASAL areas. And 70% of the livestock we have in the country are also in the ASAL areas. For example, in my county, it holds the biggest market for livestock in East Africa. I come from Garissa, and I see how water problems affect my community. So the sustainability fail come from several aspects. The first one, when we are taking programs to Garissa County or the ASAL areas at large, mostly it is not for the interest of stakeholders' interest is not being put first hand. It's an individual interest whereby people will overstep the procedures needed to be followed, and there is no public participations in such areas. That's how we lose sustainability, and the government is using a lot of money to invest in water in these areas, but none is felt on the ground, unfortunately. The second problem is In Garissa, only in Garissa, I think, and Tana River is the only place that have rivers that they can use. But most of the ASAL areas do not have permanent water resources. I just had the CS also telling us the same. And if we don't invest much in the places, then there will be a problem. Even in Garissa County itself, we have a river, but we don't have water in the town. 1 kilometer away from the river, there is no water. I will advise the ministry on how they can channel this water to be used within Garissa County, Tana River, and use the river to give other arid and semi-arid counties water resources. Let us channel this river water and use it instead of it draining itself to the ocean. In Garissa we have, or in ASAL areas, we have a lot of water. We lose a lot of water through evaporation. And I think if there is technologies that we can use to overcome that problem, then we can have a lot of water, because we use for now we use water pans, open canals. Instead, we can use the technologies and be innovative, and at least have water pans that are closed to avoid water evaporations. We can have, let's say, underground tanks, or even closed canals for these water resources. And the other thing is, we just came from a severe drought in the county, in the counties that are in the ASAL areas. And after a very severe and scarcity of water, then you find yourself in floods again. And the people don't know what to do in this time that there's a lot of floods. So if the water ministry and other water agencies can invest in educating the people from the ASAL areas by water harvesting system, if we can harvest those rainwaters, then we can use them in dry seasons. So I will hope the ministry will take measures on water harvesting. Effective communication is needed for the people of ASAL areas on how to do water harvesting, and also to provide the people with water storage facilities like underground water tanks. Let's invest more in schools also, because in schools, during the drought, kids are dropping out of school because there's no water in the area. And I will use an example of Garissa County. There is a very sad joke that people make about pastoralists, but I find it sad, but some of you who have water resources in their backyards may find it funny. They say when pastoralists want to move and the kids does not know where they are going, the parents just come to the school, open the doors, and he will be like, "Hey Farah, we are moving. You endelea tu kucheza na hizo makaratasi unacheza nazo hapo." And the parents just like that take the kids away from school and they move away from that particular school. So if there is a way that also the ministry and the government can put water around schools, then we can keep these young children in school in my area. And we can also provide water tanks for the schools so that we keep these kids who I represent from the ASAL areas to keep them at school. Before, I think my time, you see very few Somali or ASAL women coming to conferences. To hapo kwa education tuko nyuma sana. And I'm glad these days we are coming up thanks to the government and the little resources we are having to catch up. Before we used to sell, we are marginalized community, but with devolution, thanks to God, most of us are now in the limelight and are fighting for our spaces within the communities. I would like to thank the water ministries. For me, it's just those measures. If we can control the contractors on also having researches done on grounds where that we can identify aquifers, the main aquifers that we can get water. If we identify that, then we have no problem. Because in some cases, sitting in the park committee, at times people, water agencies come and their problem is they use resources, but there was not yield, there was no water found on the ground. If the government and the ministries can invest on identifying places that has water, then we will not waste these small resources we have for water investment and all that. They can identify. There is no need for drilling several meters down the ground and find gas or no water at all or salt water. I think we can invest and be innovative and create a situation whereby the engineers know already where there is water and where there is no water, so that we can cap on such problems. And also, if we can cap the water, atmospheric water, during the rainy season we are okay, but dry season, if we can cap on those atmospheric water, then it will be another innovative way of helping the people from the ASALS areas. For me, that's all I have. If every school should be given a water tank to facilitate them and have water pans around the school, so that we can also keep our children of the ASAL areas in school. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Honorable Siad. Let's appreciate her. Very useful suggestions: community education, community awareness, public participation, doing water resources, storage tanks, and involving school, including culture change and groundwater mapping. Thank you so much indeed. So we'll move to the next question, which I will put to Dr. Itunga and Alex Manyasi. We know that technology has been with us for some time, but the uptake has been so slow. The uptake has indeed been very slow. If you remember when the technology of GIS came, long time ago, the uptake has been very slow. So what steps can we take to address regulatory barriers and bottlenecks that hinder the uptake of technology in the sector and good governance? So we can start with Dr. Itunga.
Thank you, moderator, peers and distinguished participants. It is true that the uptake of technology in this sector has been a bit slow, especially focusing on the financing space for the sector. One of the aspects that we need to appreciate is that we can leverage on technology in ensuring that the performance of this sector is monitored closely. Number two, that the technology would also be uptaken to ensure that there is efficient communication among the players in the sector, so as to create awareness on the happenings within the global space. Now that we talk about the global village, which has been created by advancements in technology. As we didn't see yesterday, we were able to have our participants from the United Kingdom addressing this conference well seated here. So we can still use the same media, the same medium of communication technology to get to know what opportunities are there in the capital markets across the globe, and that would, break the barriers of distance. And by so doing, we can be able to engage with our partners from whichever corner of the globe, regardless of the language barrier. In the current situation, we have translations through technology. I would be speaking in English. Somebody who is French speaking can, get exactly what I'm, discussing through a technological gadget. And this, I've narrowed the gap that used to exist. You needed an interpreter to tell a Frenchman, if you are English speaking, what you're asking for, and in the process possible. more often than not, the message would not arrive the way you would have wanted to put it. But with technology now, we are able to communicate across, be it to the French, be it to the Chinese, be it to the Japanese, be it to those who are, speaking English, Portuguese, or any other language. So technology has narrowed that gap. And by so doing, I see it giving us that advantage where we would be able really to discuss all kind of engagement, and in particular in terms of sector financing, we can leverage on technology to that effect. The other aspect that we have as a regulator taken advantage of technology, we are using it to manipulate data quickly so that efficiently we can be able to see how various WSPs are performing, and when it comes to their ability to create finance or to attract resources either from within or from without, the information technology has been able to hinder us in a great way, and I can say it's something that we can take advantage of. Do a simulation for each WSP. What is it that they need, first of all, to break even, to have a tariff that is cost reflective, and also to have a tariff that would retain certain levels of investment, and at the same time, even to clean our balance sheets quickly, efficiently, and effectively, to the extent that it would be able to demonstrate to our potential partners, be it the banks or those who extend grant to us, how well our books of accounts are, and by so doing, then they would be able to use that information to make critical decisions that touch on financing. On the same, we've used leverage on technology to come up with what we call credit rating or credit worthiness of our WSPs. And this again goes a long way in informing the sector stakeholders, particularly the providers of finance, on how the well-being of each of the WSPs across the country, and that again would be able to bring in quick decisions that are hindered by technology to attract more financing or funding to this sector. In addition, having a technology strategy for every institution that is a player in the water space, a moderator would say, is something that really cannot be overemphasized, and would be encouraging each and every player, and more so our WSPs, to adopt technology. We don't have to really innovate, as it were, because the market already has given full or created a lot of opportunity in terms of technology that we can be able to take advantage of. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex? You'll appreciate them together?
I think I will, of course, I'll be biased based on the work that I do at APHRC, and I will take advantage of the PS being in the room to make certain propositions in terms of uptake of technology. The first observation that I want to make is government leadership. And I say that because everything starts and ends there. And why I talk about government leadership is because the enabling environment that is created for the sector to thrive or for technology to move ahead starts and ends with a framework in place that makes sure that then innovators can get space. So that's one. Secondly, we did a very comprehensive policy, legal and regulatory and institutional framework of the sector in Kenya. And we fully understand where the challenges are. What CS Chelugui was speaking about this morning is something that we used to do in the sector every time there's transition. So that then every time an officer, a senior official leaves the ministry and another one replaces him, there's a conversation around how far are we as a sector, and therefore how can we leverage the conversations that the sector has had to move the sector forward. Why I'm saying that is because of something called sector coordination, which, and I know there's a framework in the minister's office, which he is waiting for her to look at, so that then once signed, that can pave way for the sector to be better coordinated. I said I'm saying that deliberately because the PS is in the house. Now, lastly, we are in the era of the Sustainable Development Goals. We are no longer thinking about the sector in terms of provision, and I know CS Chelugui made a lot of reference to that as well. It's about sustainability, it's about the value chain, it's about safely managed. And so if that is the case, then thinking about technology in the wash space has to be looked at from all those aspects. And I wish that we would start thinking about the water sector as sanitation, water, and then irrigation, so that then we also give a lot of prominence to sanitation, which has been lacking in most of the conversations. And yet, as an economy, as we grow, we know that the population is going to be doubling soon. We know that the urban areas are going to be a serious challenge to deal with. One of the things that we did, for example, I think about 2 or 3 years ago, we looked at an institution in the ministry which was doing a 20-year plan or strategy, and we made a comparison between the strategy they had done and the strategy that had expired, which was 20 years, and it was a duplication of the previous strategy. And so when times change and resources are diminishing, the thinking then should be that honestly we need to look at technology as an aspect that comes as an intervention to ensuring that if the resources are not enough, then can we start thinking differently so that we can still offer services to the people of Kenya. I think I want to stop there, but the overall call from my end where I sit is the coordination framework within the sector players is key. Bona PS, don't worry about just call us. The breakfast that you will have, we will pay. And make sure that we are actually having a conversation with the government so that all sectors that are involved can make input into ensuring that service provision happens. Thank you.
Both of them, Dr. Itunga and Alex, thank you so much. Now we move to the next one. The next question is for Rose Nyakwana and Dr. Yaya. In your view, what are the key national strategies that we need to put in place? Key policy and strategies that we need to put in place to promote innovation, technology, and good governance in the sector, in your view? Can we start with Dr. Oyaya?
Thank you very much. As has been mentioned, my name is Charles Oyaya. I work for the International Development Institute Africa, which is a consulting research and policy thought leadership institution based in Nairobi. Very difficult question. but let me look at it from the perspective of the theme of this conference, which is harnessing technology and innovation to accelerate access to safely managed water and sanitation for all. Just focusing on the question of what key national policies, strategies that we need to have in place to ensure this happens is a question that is at the center and heart of governance. Of course, not lost on me that this session is on promoting good governance in water and sanitation. If we are to harness technology and innovation to accelerate access, that is a governance question. It's about decision making. It's about for who do we need that technology, and do we need to harness that technology, and for what purpose at the end of the day. Two, if we are to accelerate, we start from the assumption that indeed there is some movement, but we are not moving as fast as would have been expected. Then that is also a question that is at the heart of governance, because it's about decision making. And last but not least, if we are talking about all, then it means no one should be left behind. And who is being left behind? And I think from the presentations that we have had before us, we have a critical mass of Kenyans who are not enjoying their right to water and sanitation. And the question is, why? You will allow me in the next few minutes just to look at this from 4 dimensions. And this is dimensions of what I would call dimensions of governance as far as water and sanitation is concerned. The first dimension is the question of who. It is very clear that as we speak, we are not want of policies, we are not want of strategies, but we are want of who we make these policies for. And this is clearly defined in our constitutive instrument, that it is about the people, and which is at the center pillar, so to speak. And the language in our constitutive framework is very clear that we are about nurturing and protecting their well-being. And you cannot have their well-being without looking at their enjoyment on the right to water and sanitation. Secondly, is for what? Yes, we have all said in our policy documents, and which I said is not lack of it, we have the Kenya Vision 2030. We have enjoined ourselves in the Sustainable Development Goals, and we are very clear that every person, every individual should have access to what we are calling here safely managed water and sanitation, and which is a question of technology. Number 3, I would want to mention the question of how, and this is where the governance comes in. It's a question of institutions, it's a question of coordination, it's a question of structures. Are they working together? Our keynote speaker today has just said, yes, we are fragmented. Is it fragmentation because we are focused on the people? No, it is competitive arrangement. We are not coordinating, we are not speaking the same language. So when we talk about structures, we are talking about tasks, we are talking about functions. Who is supposed to do what at what level? Is that really happening? It's not a question of framework, it's a question of practice. Number 4 is a question of how we keep ourselves focused. We have said, yes, no one must be left behind. We have created structures. We have said this is what we want to do and this is how we want to move forward. But are we walking the talk? It's a question of regulation, and of course we have regulatory bodies here, and I think our keynote speaker was saying if there is any institution we must not do away with is the Water Resources Authority. It's a question of institution. How do we maintain focus? How do we maintain discipline? Issues of integrity, issues of accountability, and so on and so forth issues of values and principles become key. So I would want to probably mention in conclusion that indeed, what do we need to put in place? Number one, we are still structuring and forming. We are devolving. We must finish the transition to devolved system. Very clearly, like Honorable Member there has said, there are things you can never do in Nairobi. It's only in Garissa that you can do it. So you must strengthen that county government to do what it needs to do. We are still far from actually ensuring that. Secondly is the question of fragmentation. Competitions, not complementarity. Not people meeting to focus on the same focus that we have talked about, which is enabling every person to enjoy their right to water and sanitation of given quality. Where technology comes in, we have to look at that. And I think my colleague Alex has just mentioned that. Number three, we must invest. We must invest. That is a question of financing, whether it is innovative or otherwise. But we must resource this resolve that we have made. And indeed, our policy framework, our legal framework, clearly says that where you have a responsibility, resources should be there. Yet, we know where that responsibility is, but that is also where we don't have resources. Last but not least is a question of intergovernmental relationship. Again, the policy is clear that national government and county government should operate in a consultative, in a cooperative way, in a respectful way. Are they talking about the same people who share the same space that we call the Republic of Kenya? How can we strengthen that? And in conclusion, and this is where technology comes, is technology for who and for what? We need to clearly know, and in the context that we have, we are talking about technology agnosticity, where it is best, where it is needed and appropriate for that purpose and for those people. So let me say finally that indeed we have the policy, but we have unfinished business. In the water sector, we are talking about National Sanitation Management Policy, which has, for example, a chapter on resilient technologies. Can we have that happen? In the health sector, we have Environmental Health and Sanitation Bill that provides the right to clean and healthy environment. Can we do that? We are revising different legislations. Can we fast track this? Then at the end of the day, we will say indeed, we can harness, we can accelerate, and no one
Thank you so
will
much,
be left
Dr.
behind.
Charles
Thank
Oyaya.
you very much.
Thank you so much. Rose?
Thank you so much, Engineer Lima. I acknowledge presence of PS, CEOs present, chairman, and all protocols observed. I thank so much the organizers of this conference because it has come at a good time when we need to have a conversation about good governance and about technology in our country. The water sector has sufficient basic policy. In terms of the constitution, we do have a very enabling constitution, and we can use it in every other aspect. Similarly, we do have the legislations like the Water Act and other relevant legislations. But then it is not only about policy, it is not only about the law. We need to ask ourselves where the rain started beating us. One, we need proper coordination of government working in terms of institutions. I heard Dr. Lydia asked if we are over-institutionalized. That is a question which we need to ask ourselves, because if we compare ourselves to other countries like who have succeeded in the water sector, like Israel, then we would find that they have very institutions and they have higher water coverage. And also they have implemented well the use of technology. Now, the policies, the question is what we really need to, the strategies we need to put in place to implement technology. One is capacity building for the this young staff that we are employing, and even for generally the workforce to embrace technology, because we have critical issues like loss of water that we really need to identify before long, very fast, and take care of that loss, because non-revenue water is a menace where we lose like almost 50% of the water. And so even recouping money to refinance the water sector is challenged by this issue of non-revenue water. And we have cable fiber in the current technology world. I think you realize that in terms of technology, it is possible to trace the flow of water and where the breakage of water is. And also, we can also use technology very well in terms of mapping. We have a challenge that was pointed out by CS Chelugui, that we have one CEO of Nairobi Water having the map in his head. I wished he were, some special technology that already has been mapped out, that we have all the pipes of Nairobi put into that technology. But if it is a human being that we are counting on who can fail anytime, then that is very dangerous. I think we really need to employ technology in terms of even master plans in our country, and in terms of collecting data and information. We are not so sure sometimes about even the coverages, about even the areas that are not covered. And then we need to have these investments. We need to have investments on the technology so that it is not something that we just wish, but we can see it work. Because we employ a lot of money to develop infrastructures, but in terms of sustainability and maintenance, we lag behind, because we really are not sure about.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rose. So kindly let's appreciate Rose and Charles. Thank you so much. The last one goes to Eva. Eva is from the private sector. So how can the government collaborate with the private sector and development partners and other institutions to entrench best practices in terms of technology, good governance, innovation in the water and sanitation sector?
Thank you very much, Engineer Lima. I'll probably go with the first example that the CS Chirogoi gave on the water sector and what translated and changed as a paradigm shift in the water sector. It was when the private sector was brought on board and they were consolidated so that they could see the impact of the informal spaces. So the first is the moment the private sector wants to come together, is the government to give that enabling space for these voices to be heard so that they can be consolidated to speak as one voice. Because as a private sector, my company is now 30 years in October, and the challenges that face us are usually policy and issues that cross-cut different ministries. I'll give an example of a solution that we wanted to solve for girls going schools, and there was a problem of disposal. So we have MCA, which is within the Ministry of Environment, not allowing us to put across an innovation of a best practice. And then we had the Public Act that allowed us to do the same technology as a best practice. So when you start doing, and you've been allowed by public health, then AMCA comes, NEMA comes and says you cannot be able to do this as a best practice. So you as a private sector, and you've thought through, and there's a problem and you can save a problem. How can this be solved out? But it's at the point that we consolidated ourselves, a few private sector, and went to NEMA, and they started seeing the need of what it is that we are doing. So giving us that push that when we want to come together, and giving us space to speak, and giving us a space to allow our voices to be heard, that becomes a very good space. So when it comes to the innovation and technology, innovation is need-driven. So as we sit, we see a problem and we want to solve a problem. But when the innovation is now picked, how do we bring it back to the community? We are remaining 7 years to the fulfillment and the achievement of the targets of the SDG. And the PS reminded us that yesterday. But I've always asked myself, have you gone back to the local community and asked them what is the SDG? What is Sustainable Goal number 6? Who was it designed for? Who was it targeted for? It was targeted for that person that is in the local and in the informal spaces or in the communities that are not able to come to such forums. So how do we localize these languages? Because these languages have to be localized. When you go to I work a lot in the informal spaces. When you go to the informal spaces, the innovations in that space, they're amazing. They can solve out quite clear very many problems and very many challenges. But most of the time, what happens is like we do it for them instead of doing it with them. We go to them, get ideas, then come back and do it for them. So for us to be able to bring private sector, especially the SMEs and the community enterprises, to the next level is that space where government gives an enabling space. And that was a very good initiative in 2019. That the private sector had a voice within an international national sanitation conference, and their voices were heard. There is a report that came out. PS, I would want you to read the report that came out about SMEs and community enterprises, and those are the things that we are.
It seems technology is failing us when we are talking about technology. Thank you, thank you.
It was the best point, so that would have been very unfortunate. The same question was asked. 5 years later, we are giving the same answers. So PS, you spoke about doing a white paper. Probably the white paper we need to do is a white paper to look at conclusions of all this research and papers that have been done. If you go to 2000, if you go to 1998, 2000, 2015, 2022, 2023, all these research papers say the same thing, the conclusions are the same. So the question is, why don't we have a different conclusion from the one in 2023 that the one was in 2204? Why are we repeating paper after paper and not working in the conclusion and the results or the findings that we find in this paper? So let us localize our languages. Let us localize these conferences. Let us reach out to the community where innovation and technology arises. And in closure, I would want us to go back, go on Google and go to Malawi, the boy who hastened the wind. That was a boy in a village in Malawi. There was drought, and he took his father's bicycle and dismantled it to come up with an innovation that changed a village in Malawi. That is what local spaces can. Let us bring our language back to the basic. We are doing this for the community. Let us do it with them, not for them. Thank you very much. And now that I have the mic, PS, special guest, we invite you tomorrow, and everybody in this room. We have Nairobi, Malindi, Nakuru, and Kisumu manual emptiers who have come to be part of this conference, and we are going to have what we call Pit Emptiers Challenge to look at the health, safety, and dignity of manual emptiers. So for them, those are the local spaces I'm talking about. You will see innovation in that challenge. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Let's appreciate Eva. So let's appreciate all of them. Indeed, our issues are just coming out, that we need to be focused. Because we start, we stop, start, stop, and that is our problem. And that is what is coming out. And we don't involve the people we serve, the public participation. So we work for them, but we don't involve them. So many good issues have come. I think these have been taken, and we'll agree on the way forward on how they can be put into action. So with that, I want to request the PS to come for a photo session with the panelists as we welcome the next session. The next panel will be moderated by Dr. Simon Mdondo. I will request him to come, and Professor Corey from Oregon University will make a presentation. So Dr. Mdondo, Dr. Mdondo will chair, and Professor Corey will make the presentation. Just come. Participants will continue because of we have to complete this assignment. So please bear. Let's finish the program.
Honorable PS, all protocol observed. I take this opportunity to welcome Professor Corey Russell from Oregon University. Professor Corey is a professor of civil engineering from Oregon University. He did his BSc in environmental biology from Taylor University in Indiana. Then he proceeded to undertake his master's in environmental science from the same university, that is Taylor University in Indiana, and did a second master's in civil engineering, and finally a PhD in civil engineering and environmental engineering. He's an assistant professor at the University of Oregon. Professor Corey, please welcome.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you to all the organizers, to all the distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I understand that I'm speaking right before lunch, which is the worst time to be talking. Standing between a whole group of people and lunch, it's never a good thing. So I will try and make this as quick as possible and not keep you from lunch. What I want to talk about is sort of three aspects. When we're talking about water and sanitation, a lot of the talks that have been here today are bringing up important topics, but most of it, as was noted by one of the panelists here a minute ago, have been focused on water, and rightfully so, right? Water is life, we focus on water. But equally as important is that second word up there, sanitation. And we don't like to talk about it, right? It's that latrine that's in the backyard that nobody wants to go out and clean. It's the thing that we need to pull inside if we're really going to make progress on reducing illness, on reducing inequality, on harnessing economic advantages of clean water and the sort of health and well-being that comes with those sorts of things. And one of the areas that this is actually most important is informal settlements or slums, right? And this is a massive problem globally. This is not just a problem in certain areas, it's everywhere in the world right now. There's about 1 billion people that are living in informal slums, and by 2050, that's expected to be somewhere around 2 to 3 billion people. That means that informal settlements will become the predominant form of urbanization on the globe. And so we have to engage with these communities if we're going to make real progress in provision of water and sanitation. So, why am I here? What do I actually bring to this conversation in any way possible? I have been working with container-based sanitation as a way of providing provision in informal settlements for about the last decade or more. Now, me personally, I have been more of a conduit for resources to the organizations that do the real work, the local community organizers and people on the ground. Specifically, I've worked with Fresh Life, I've worked with Sanergy, with Sanitation, and other groups in Peru, Haiti, Ghana, these sorts of areas. And as my role has been in that is to be the chair of the Container-Based Sanitation Alliance, which has been bringing together private organizations to work with research, to use research to accelerate the adoption of new forms of sanitation technologies so that we can provide sanitation in some of the most difficult places to provide these sorts of things. That is transitional sanitation that can provide the needs of people right now and at a future time transition into other forms of sanitation as funding becomes available. But one of the most difficult aspects of that is not necessarily that we have a new form of technological rollout. It's more in how that new technology interacts with the regulatory and financial frameworks that already exist, right? As new technologies come into these sectors, we often find that they don't mesh well with how we've financed other forms in the past. So for example, one of the things that we've been working on as a coalition of universities, including here in Kenya with Meru University and with Fresh Life and Sanitation, is to look at what are the enabling environments that are necessary to actually roll this out at scale, right? So if container-based sanitation is such a great solution, why is it not being scaled up more rapidly? And much of that comes down to how you finance these things and what the regulatory environments are and the strategic plans for that. And so a lot of the research that we've been doing has been in Peru, it's been in Kenya, and it's been in South Africa with the city of Cape Town. And right now, we have gathered data from over 3 years of research on this. And we will be releasing a bunch of these. We're analyzing it right now, and we'll be releasing a bunch of different papers and suggestions. But more importantly, what we're doing is spending time as researchers with the implementers of this so that the research does not just go into a paper that sits on a shelf, right? One of the problems with research is that often we write these long, very complicated reports that go onto a shelf and no one reads it, or if they read it, they're like, that's nice, and then it doesn't change anything. So one of the things that we're doing is throughout this process, all of the data that we're gathering, we're presenting that back to the local governments and back to the organizations that are actually implementing this. And this provides a real opportunity, I think, when we start to view research as not just about producing papers or producing knowledge that sits in a locked box, but something that actually informs the application on the ground. A couple other things as far as takeaways that we've really seen as important enabling sorts of topics from this research are, one, that what we're seeing as far as private service providers with CBS is allowing efficiencies, much in the way that we see efficiencies around non-revenue water in the water sector. In the sanitation sector, we're seeing this sort of private entrepreneurial models can be harnessed to actually improve the efficiency of sanitation provision and bring costs down lower than, say, pit latrines, sewers, and septic tanks. So those sort of innovations should be adopted and studied and then placed into action in these other technologies. That is not to say that CBS is the perfect solution for every situation. The goal going forward is really a citywide inclusive sanitation model, right? Where you have a suite of sanitation technologies that you roll out in coordination with each other. And having a plan to roll that out in coordination at scale enables that to actually be something that is implemented in all areas, including informal settlements. Another important point that I would bring out, the topic of fragmentation of sort of regulatory environments and of different prioritizations is really key. No one individual project alone will reach 100% of a population. It has to be this coordinated effort across different technologies, and it needs to be placed as a priority within different water utilities, right? It needs to have a sanitation department that has a focus on rolling out sanitation in a very systematic way. Lastly, I would just note that if there's no institution, then capacity development is very difficult, right? And sanitation, if we go back to the Millennium Development Goals, we had the water goal. It was 2 years later that they added the sanitation goal. It was like we just sort of forgot at the international level that we needed sanitation, right? Sanitation is always lagging behind water. But it is so important in terms of keeping water supplies safe and clean, and it reduces the burden of treating that water and having fresh drinking water available. So basically, when it comes to those sorts of things, we need to have those partnerships. And I really see government, research, and the private sector as sort of three legs of a stool, right? If you take one of those out, it becomes very difficult to sit on that three-legged stool. But when all of those are working together in a collaborative way, there's not competition between those three elements, but there's actually collaboration. That can be a really powerful thing. Much of the work around container-based sanitation is a result of research collaborating with the private sector to produce breakthroughs and outcomes, and then those private sector actors working closely with governments to try and create an enabling environment. And so I'll just end there and say that I think it is a wonderful thing that everyone is here to talk about this, and I think it is really going to provide some great momentum going forward. So thank you very much for having me, and I really appreciate it. Thank you.
An applause once more for Professor Russell. I take this opportunity to invite the following panelists: Professor Engineer James Meso, Dr. Sheila Simeo. Please come across. Professor Engineer Meso, where are you? Yeah, please come. Dr. Sheila Simiu, Dr. Letangule, the CEO of Kenya Water Institute, Dr. Boniface Kiteme, and Mtembei Kigige, the principal of Meru National Polytechnic. After such a brief and direct to point presentation by Professor, here are some questions that I want to direct to the panelists. The first question is directed to the CEO of Kenya Water Institute, being at the center of training in the area of water. And this is the question: how can research and development play a significant role in driving innovation and addressing the challenges in the water and sanitation sector? Yeah, please, Dr. Ari.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I want to also take this opportunity to thank the professor for that very detailed and quite informative presentation. As the moderator has rightly put it, my name is Dr. Leiro Letangule, the CEO of Kenya Water Institute, and I want to begin by saying that the question is about how research and development plays significant role in driving innovation and addressing challenges in the water and sanitation sector. Let me say that research and innovation go hand in hand in terms of driving change in this sector. And as Kenya Water Institute, as you're aware, we conduct training. That's part of our mandate. We do research, we do consultancy and outreach programs. And as an institution, we produce qualified personnel who are expected to drive change in the entire water sector. And we also ensure as an institution that the training programs that we deliver actually address specific training gaps in the industry. And how do we ensure that our training programs address those specific training gaps? We continuously conduct research and development to inform curriculum development, and also ensure that our curriculum and our training programs actually go hand in hand with the needs of the industry. At the same time, there is need for collaboration between the sector players, such as water service providers and other institutions within the sector, so that there should be that collaboration and working together so that we can be able to continuously address these challenges that we encounter in the industry. In terms of how we can continuously work as an institution with the sector, it is very critical for us to work together so that we can be able to come up with innovative ways and solutions to address the needs of the industry. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, CEO Kewi. I think that was brief and to the point. You touched on research, you touched on training and collaboration. The next question goes to Professor Engineer Meso. And the question is about the steps that can be taken to promote research and collaboration, sharing the knowledge and market requirement. Please, very briefly, because we are running short of time. Professor, please respond to that.
Thank you and good afternoon. As my colleague from JQuat has introduced me, I'm James Meso. I'm very thankful for Engineer Simon for having asked me this question, because Professor had already answered the question in a way. While I was seated there, I was really laboring on how we can be able to transfer the knowledge that we generate through research from our shelves into some innovation. So we have a challenge as a developing country. We have quite a lot of information that can help us come up with our own innovations rather than aping from our development partners. But we have a gap. How do we transition this information into a development activity? So basically, if you check through most organizations, including the parastatals, they have a research and development department. I keep on asking myself, what do these people do under R&D? I've never gotten an answer. And today, you heard what the CS said. Nairobi City loses almost 45%. And take note of this, if we are not careful, we'll continue hearing this story over the next 10 years. Time has come when we have to use the data that we have and develop some innovative ways of addressing the problem. And we really don't need to task the government with giving us solutions to some of these problems. In our own rights, we need to support the government. How can we be able to transition from 45% of non-revenue losses to something like 30%? The structures are there, but as Kenyans, and I'm sorry to say so, we don't want to follow the frameworks and the structures that are there. We have very good innovative tools, one of them being the performance contract. As a manager of a water utility company, what business do you have signing a performance contract if you cannot reduce, if you cannot give yourself a target of reducing the non-revenue water from, say, 40% to, say, 39.8% over a given period of time? We are not short of knowledge. We are in academia. We have all that information that you require. The only thing we need is for you to invite us. We can't invite ourselves. Otherwise, I'm afraid we'll end up in our graves with all this knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor, for addressing the issue of the research data being industry-based to solve the problem that we encounter in the water and other sectors. The last question is directed towards Dr. Sheila, and the question that you are required to respond to is, what are the specific programs or partnerships that are in place to bridge the gap between the research and the implementation? Yeah, Dr. Sheila.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sheila Simiyu. I work with the African Population and Health Research Center. And I needed to say that because my answer will explain why. So there are various programs, and Professor here has mentioned about several programs. I'm sure there are many at the academic institutions, and I'm sure even Prof partners with Mary University. And there are several programs that are implemented that actually move research from just research to implementation. And we have very many cases or many examples of innovations in sanitation specifically, or even in water, that have been implemented in our communities. But now, coming back to where I work and where we also believe in performing research that leads to improvement in lives, we not only build at APHRC, we not only build the capacity of researchers, but we also believe in doing research that is impactful. So we have a special training program that also builds the capacity of researchers, enabling them to complete their research programs, but we also work with young researchers in doing research that is impactful. And I can go on and on to give specific examples, but I believe the solution is in making sure that the researchers and the research institutions and the universities, for example, we are working closely with the implementing partners so that then we are not just working in silos, but rather we are working on innovations that are implementable. And I like what was said previously, that we are also working with the people, not just for the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sheila from AJPRC. From the discussion, I think there are some critical points that have come out. From the Kenya Water Institute, Kenya Water Institute, the CEO was pointing out to the point of the research gaps, the training, and the collaboration that are in place, and the curriculum basically targeting the specific problems in the field, which is a good step towards bridging the gap between research, capacity building, and solving the problem in the water. Professor Meso is from Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology, and also implementing the development agenda that is data-based, where the projects, when they are being implemented, then the universities or the researchers are involved, so that the data collected not only for academia, but for purposes of implementation. And basically, this is the same sentiment that are offered by Dr. Sheila, on where there is a partnership, the research organization and the implementing organization. And many, many other more. I know there are quite a number of projects on the black soldier fly for sanitation improvement, the number of recovery of resources for, from waste to resource, so that sewage, sludge, and any other such waste are not looked at as waste, but as resources for other rich products. Thank you. I want to hand over to the main MC. Yeah, please, you're welcome. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Professor, for that presentation. Let's give this panelist another round of applause, please, for those very worthy reactions and feedback from different sectors. For interest of time, we'll leave it at that, but I'm sure if you still have opportunity to interact with the four, either during our lunch break, you can still get time to do business-to-business engagement later as we continue. So the more they disturb you during lunchtime, it's nothing else. It's from the feedback that they got here. They'll be engaging you as you proceed. Otherwise, let me allow you to take our seats. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So find time, please, to engage them as we continue in the afternoon. I know we have crashed our tea break. I know we are running late with our lunch break, and we need to take a break now. I'm also informed that the discussions will go on in the afternoon. Let's have some in-house rule. Our PS is still here. Thank you so much, PS. What time is it now? 1:20? 1:22, eh? I know most of you either have sneaked out quietly to take their tea and come back. We'll appreciate that. for today. And I know most of us will take time to go through the exhibition. If you still get time, we can do that. And because Ambugo is here, let me allow him to make some few announcements before we agree on how we are going to break and resume in the afternoon.
Good afternoon once more. The energy levels are down. I know we have been taking tea silently and coming back, because when we were outside it was full. Now allow us, because of the other sessions that have taken place in the morning, but we believe they are very fruitful and contribute to this conversation. We are still at the Kenya Water and Sanitation International Conference and Exhibition 2023, which is also being streamed live on WASPAC Kenya YouTube page, so you can follow it. So I invite you to the program on page 36. We were supposed to have breakout sessions. This is the auditorium, Johari. Then we have Tamanisha. Makutano is on the other side, just after the parking bay. So you'll be guided when you enter Makutano. I think you'll be guided, I'm told it's upstairs. That is where you have the Tamanisha breakout session. Baraza 2, where we are having lunch, the tents, those are called Baraza lawns. So what you face directly is the Baraza conference. That is where we have Baraza 2. Makutano is here, I've already mentioned it. So all the sessions that were supposed to happen at 12:15 to 1:30 have been shifted, and I think we need to agree. We go for lunch for an hour. I want to believe that is sufficient. As many as of the opinion say aye, as many as of the contrary opinion say nay, the ayes have it. So we are back at our breakout sessions at 2:30. 2:30 is agreeable, so 1 hour. And we are just shifting the panels unless there is a clarification from Dr. Kabaria. I know there was the session for CECs, and I believe that, just a minute. So I'm told that session you are seeing in promoting good governance by CECs in Johari has failed to raise quorum. Most of the CECs were here yesterday, so that one is cancelled. The available CECs will join other panels we have already discussed. All abstracts are being discussed in Baraza 2. So you have the abstract on capacity development sub-theme 4, which is in Baraza 2 at 12:15 to 1:30. Now that one will start at exactly 2:30, so that we avoid the confusion that has been there. And again, we have said that this is the holding room of Johari. You can access it from the other side. We have our scientific technical committee team there. So session brief to guide the chairs and the other panelists where there is no clarity. Please, we gave a contact number this morning. That is where you can get assistance. But all the breakout, so what happens in auditorium here, the convener session 2, which was scheduled for 2:30, that one remains intact, because the other session, which was to happen in the auditorium, now has been cancelled. But the others are shifted to the afternoon, and abstract sessions, all of them in Baraza. So in that order, so that we don't lose track of time. I believe you understand that there's protocol in government, and times we have just to follow that. But this time we want the session chairs to strictly follow time. because now we are moving into very technical areas, and we want to discuss those sessions. And whatever time has been allocated here is international best practice. We believe we'll be able to catch up. So unless there is anything else, so we have agreed is 2:30, and lunch was supposed to be at what time? 1:30. I think, yeah, this is the right time to go for lunch, and we know where we are getting our lunch. Back to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, CEO Anthony Ambugo, for that direction. I hope it's clear for all of us. Secondly, let me support what you just said. We need quorums in those sessions. It's day 2, and as you go for lunch, kindly, we need quorum in those sessions. I wish you could even appoint some chief whips to whip and mobilize all members in those respective committees and sessions to go back there. So please, after lunch, I know it'll take time to stroll a little bit, make some 2 calls home. Please, let's assemble to our respective sessions. That is our very humble request. I know we have lost that session for CECs, but let's not lose any other session. So let's have forum. Let's have forum. Thank you so much.